Every morning at exactly 6:45, my neighbor walked out of his small blue house, carrying two things: a worn black backpack and the tiny hand of his 6-year-old daughter. Neither of them ever spoke loudly. They simply walked to the corner bus stop together, waited quietly, and disappeared into the rush of the morning. For nearly 2 years, that was our routine. I watched from my front porch while drinking coffee before leaving for work. Sometimes his daughter waved. He always smiled politely, but we never really talked. Until the morning he knocked on my door. When I opened it, he looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry to bother you. I wouldn't ask unless I had no other choice." He looked down for a moment before continuing. "My truck won't start. My daughter has a doctor's appointment. Would you mind giving us one ride?" Looking back, I had no idea that saying yes to that simple request would change both of our lives forever. My name is Claire Dawson. I was 33 years old. I owned a small graphic design studio, lived alone, and believed my life was perfectly organized. Every weekday followed the same schedule. Coffee at 6. Morning walk with my golden retriever, Charlie. Work by 8. Home before 6. Dinner. Books. Sleep. Predictable. Peaceful. Safe. After ending an engagement 3 years earlier, I had stopped believing unexpected things usually ended well. Routine became my comfort. It was easier not to become attached. Easier not to expect too much from people. The quiet man next door seemed to live the same way. His name was Ethan Carter. He rarely invited anyone over, rarely received visitors. His yard was always neatly maintained. His porch light turned off at exactly the same time every morning. Everything about him suggested discipline. Not loneliness, just quiet purpose. The only exception was his daughter. Lily had enough energy for both of them. She loved collecting colorful leaves, talking to birds, drawing with sidewalk chalk. Whenever she saw me gardening, she'd proudly hold up another picture she'd made. "Look, I drew Charlie." My dog usually looked more like a fuzzy potato than a golden retriever. I always told her it was perfect. Ethan would smile apologetically. "I'm sorry. She talks to everyone. I hope she never stops," I'd reply. He'd simply nod. One rainy afternoon, several months earlier, I noticed Lily sitting alone on their porch after school. She wasn't crying. She just looked disappointed. I walked over carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. One for me, one for her. "What happened?" She sighed dramatically. "Daddy forgot today was family picnic day." Before I could answer, Ethan's truck pulled into the driveway. The moment he stepped out, I could see the guilt on his face. "I'm so sorry. There was an emergency at work." Lily hugged him anyway. "It's okay. We can have our picnic tomorrow." After they went inside, I realized something. That little girl never blamed her father. She knew he was trying. The next weekend, I quietly left a picnic basket on their porch with a simple note. Every family deserves a second chance at picnic day. There was no signature. The following Monday, I found another note in my mailbox. "Thank you." She smiled all afternoon. Nothing more. No names. No explanation. Just gratitude. That seemed to describe Ethan perfectly. Over the following months, I learned little things about him without really trying. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing plant nearly 40 minutes away. He left before sunrise, returned just before dinner. Every Friday evening, he and Lily planted something new in the tiny flower bed beside their porch. Tulips, daisies, lavender, sunflowers. Their yard slowly became the prettiest on the entire street. One evening, while taking Charlie for a walk, I noticed Ethan repairing his old pickup truck. The hood was open. Grease covered his hands. "Everything okay?" I asked. He smiled. "It'll survive. I hope." The truck looked nearly 20 years old. Rust covered the wheel wells. One headlight had faded. The driver's seat had been repaired with gray duct tape. Still, he treated it carefully, like someone protecting the only thing standing between his family and disaster. "Have you thought about replacing it?" I asked. He laughed softly. "One day. Right now. Someone else needs shoes that actually fit." He nodded toward Lily, who was chasing butterflies across the lawn. I understood immediately. Parents make those choices every day. Children first. Everything else later. The following week, I accidentally learned why Ethan was raising Lily alone. A package had been delivered to my porch by mistake. When I carried it next door, the front door was slightly open. I knocked. Ethan apologized while signing for the box. Behind him, I noticed a framed photograph on the hallway table. A smiling woman holding baby Lily. Fresh white lilies rested beside the picture. Seeing me glance toward it, Ethan quietly said, "My wife, Emily. She passed away 4 years ago." I immediately regretted looking. "I'm sorry." He gave a small smile. "So am I." There was something about the way he said those words. Not bitterness. Not anger. Just quiet acceptance. Before leaving, I noticed Lily carefully dusting the photograph with a tiny cloth. She looked up and smiled. Mommy liked flowers. No child should have to remember a parent through photographs. That thought stayed with me all evening. The following Saturday morning, while watering my garden, I watched Ethan teaching Lily how to ride a bicycle. She fell. He helped her stand. She tried again. Fell again. He never became impatient. Never raised his voice. Only encouraged her. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep trying. Eventually, she rode nearly the entire length of the sidewalk by herself. She cheered so loudly that half the neighborhood looked outside. Ethan clapped like she'd just won the Olympics. Watching them together reminded me of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not because life had been easy for them, because they kept choosing joy anyway. Then came the Tuesday morning that changed everything. I had just finished pouring my coffee when someone knocked gently on my front door. Standing there was Ethan. His expression was calm, but I could see the worry in his eyes. "I'm sorry to ask. My truck won't start. Lily has a specialist appointment across town. I've already called every taxi company. They're all delayed." He hesitated before quietly asking, "If it isn't too much trouble, would you be willing to give us one ride?" I looked past him at Lily standing beside the old pickup, clutching her little backpack and trying to smile even though she looked nervous. Without thinking twice, I grabbed my car keys. "I'll have the car ready in 2 minutes." I had no idea that the short drive to the children's hospital was almost completely silent. Lily sat in the back seat hugging a small stuffed rabbit. Every few minutes, she looked out the window before quietly asking, "Are we almost there?" Ethan smiled into the rearview mirror. "Almost." Although he sounded calm, I could tell something was wrong. His hands remained tightly folded in his lap whenever we stopped at a traffic light. He wasn't nervous about asking for a ride. He was worried about what waited at the hospital. When we arrived, Ethan thanked me and reached for the door handle. "I appreciate this." I smiled. "Of course." Then I noticed something. He wasn't walking toward the main entrance. He was heading toward the pediatric oncology wing. My heart sank. Lily squeezed his hand as they disappeared inside. I drove away, but I couldn't stop thinking about them. Later that afternoon, I was working in my studio when my phone rang. It was Ethan. "I'm sorry to ask for another favor." His voice sounded exhausted. "The appointment lasted much longer than expected. My truck still won't start. Would you mind picking us up?" 20 minutes later, I found them sitting quietly outside the hospital entrance. Lily looked sleepy. Ethan looked heartbroken. As we drove home, Lily eventually fell asleep in the back seat. Only then did Ethan quietly speak. "She has leukemia." The words seemed to freeze the air inside the car. I glanced at him. "I'm so sorry." He nodded slowly. "She's responding well. But today's test showed she'll need another round of treatment." I didn't know what to say. Sometimes there are no words big enough for another person's pain. He continued quietly. "My wife died from an aneurysm 4 years ago. 3 months later, Lily was diagnosed. I promised her she'd never face another hospital alone." His voice cracked for the first time. "So I sold almost everything. My motorcycle, my retirement savings, my fishing boat. I even turned down promotions because they required traveling. I couldn't leave her." Suddenly everything made sense. The old truck, the worn clothes, the second jobs, the quiet life. Every sacrifice had been for one little girl. When we arrived home, Lily woke up smiling. "Thank you for the ride, Miss Claire." She hugged me before running inside. That simple hug stayed with me all evening. The next morning I noticed Ethan trying once again to start the truck. The engine barely turned over. Then it died. He sighed. Without saying anything, I called my friend Marcus, who owned a local repair shop. "Can you tow a truck today?" "Sure." "Family emergency?" "You could say that." Marcus inspected the vehicle later that afternoon. His call came an hour afterward. "The transmission is finished. The engine isn't far behind. It'll cost more to repair than it's worth." I looked toward Ethan's driveway. He was sitting on the porch helping Lily color pictures. He had no idea. That evening, several neighbors gathered for our monthly community barbecue. Someone casually mentioned Ethan's truck. Mrs. Wilson quietly shared what she'd learned. "He works nights now. What? She nodded. Warehouse job after finishing maintenance work. When does he sleep? Hardly. The entire conversation changed. One by one, neighbors began sharing stories. He repaired my fence after the storm. He never charged me. He fixed my water heater. He carried groceries every week after my surgery. He shoveled my driveway all winter. The quiet man nobody really knew had quietly helped almost everyone on our street. We had simply never compared notes before. The following Saturday, I knocked on every door in the neighborhood. Not asking for money, just telling people the truth. About Lily. About the truck. About everything Ethan had quietly carried alone. Nobody hesitated. Within 48 hours, the neighborhood had organized itself. Mechanics donated labor. A dealership owner who lived nearby quietly offered a reliable used pickup at cost. Teachers from Lily's school organized meal deliveries. Parents donated gift cards. Someone started mowing Ethan's lawn every week. Nobody wanted recognition. Everyone simply wanted to help. When Marcus handed me the keys to the replacement truck, he smiled. Tell him the neighborhood already paid for it. What if he refuses? Marcus laughed. He probably will. So don't ask. The following Sunday afternoon, nearly 30 neighbors gathered outside Ethan's house. He opened the front door, looking completely confused. Mrs. Wilson stepped forward first. You've spent years taking care of everyone else. It's our turn. Marcus held out the truck keys. Ethan immediately shook his head. I can't accept this. I smiled. You don't have to. You already did. He looked around. People he barely knew. Children holding handmade cards for Lily. Neighbors carrying casseroles. Gardeners offering free landscaping. Teachers promising after-school tutoring whenever Lily missed classes. His eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to repay all of you. An elderly veteran standing near the back smiled warmly. You already have. You just never kept score. Lily ran outside and saw the truck. Daddy, it's shiny. She climbed inside and laughed louder than I'd ever heard. For the first time since I'd met them, Ethan wasn't pretending to be strong. He simply cried. A few months later, Lily completed another successful round of treatment. Doctors smiled more often. Appointments became less frequent. One bright spring afternoon, our neighborhood gathered again. This time not for an emergency, for a celebration. Lily rang the hospital's treatment completion bell. Nearly every neighbor attended. Watching her laugh beneath hundreds of colorful balloons, I realized something. One ride had become a friendship. That friendship had become a community. And that community had become a family. 6 months later, Ethan knocked on my front door again. This time he wasn't asking for help. He was holding 2 cups of coffee. I think it's my turn to give someone a ride. I laughed. What does that mean? He smiled. It means, would you have dinner with me? I looked at Charlie, who wagged his tail as if he had already decided my answer. I smiled. I'd love to. Years later, people often asked how Ethan and I met. They expected some romantic story, a fancy dinner, an unforgettable first date. Instead, I always smiled and told them the truth. It started with one ride. Sometimes life doesn't change because of extraordinary moments. Sometimes everything changes because one ordinary person says yes when someone quietly asks for help. That single act of kindness didn't just get a father and his daughter to a doctor's appointment. It reminded an entire neighborhood that the strongest people are often the ones carrying the heaviest burdens in complete silence, and that sometimes all it takes to change someone's life forever is one open car door and a willing heart.